You know, this time of year we get a lot of bad surprises. You see a player run you were excited about, and oh man, there's no getting over the fact that that's a 4 or 5 when you were expecting something in the 4 threes. Or we were really hoping that quarterback was going to be at least 5'8", but it's really 5'7", and he was kind of on his tippy toes. Or, you know, I could talk myself into him at 160 pounds, but I'm pretty sure he was close to 130 soaking wet. So, 'tis the season for bad surprises, but I thought, we'll put a good one out there this week. I told you we were probably going to have to take this week off because I wasn't intending to travel for work, but yet here I am. So nicely, RJ was able to join me, and we're going to do a quick run through of call it the top 20 picks of the first round right now. I put a mock together, RJ put his together, but since we're kind of doing this last minute, we'll just kind of play off of mine and then kind of go through who we have where. We haven't really pegged where they're going in the NFL draft. I think at this point we're kind of in the chalk territory or some of the top prospects in each of these positions at the moment. A lot can obviously change based off of landing spots, but for now, it's an interesting place to start. But anyways, RJ, thanks for making the time as always, and it's good that we're finally getting these started, right?
Yeah, it's a fantastic time of year. I get excited for this. Um, also gives us a little insight onto you know who we should expect at certain picks, and that's always fun for people to come to that realization of what they will likely get with their picks.
Yep, makes sense. All right, so we'll go ahead and jump into it here. So, as mentioned, we only got to the top 20, mostly just because of a lack of time to get through more. I think, and also lack of hosts. The risk of doing this is that, kind of going open kimono on some of what we think in terms of this draft class uh, and let people jump us. But you know what? I'm here for content and I'm here for entertainment, not necessarily for the best outcomes. But nonetheless, that is something that's a little tough to do when you're getting too deep into it right now. But we'll at least go cursory level at the start, and I don't think there's anything that's going to be too wildly surprising versus chalk. Maybe some of the positions, maybe some of the perceived need or fit. Um, but we can go step by step on it. But first and foremost, we've got the Cardinals on the clock at 101, and I made the wildly hot take of giving them Ashton Genty, who is for most, I'd say, the 101, except in really, really super flex driven leagues. And considering Cardinals has one of the guys who was projected as the 101 last year, Caleb Williams, at quarterback, just adding the 101 this year to the stable just seems like the right thing to do.
Yeah, this is the most logical pick, or seems to be at this point.
And I mean, he starts building himself a nice little offense. He'll have Caleb at quarterback. He'll have Genty and Jalen Wright at running back. Pickens at his wide receiver with some depth behind it, and then Sam Laporta at tight end. He's to fill in some things, but starting to have a nice little core to really build around in Arizona. Next up, we have Saints. You know what? A lot of these mocks, we overemphasize need on teams. And I think we really forget how really our drafts start. It's not so fast. It's a lot of people saying this pick is on the block every time that a new pick comes on the clock. And we usually get through 7 or 8 picks in the first day and maybe 8 to 10 more in the second day. And if we get through the first round by day 3, we're moving at a pretty good pace. And with that in mind, I think the Saints are going to go with Cam Ward. Yes, they have Tua. Yes, they had JJ McCarthy and just traded him. I think he is still fully in the asset collection mode. And what can I get the most for if I take it? So I expect Saints at some point will decide he wants to trade this pick. But he very well may make it either after posturing to take Cam Ward or actually taking Cam Ward. But I also don't think it's the wrong pick here either. I'm watching his pro day in the background as we go about doing this, and I think he's just kind of the first quarterback on the draft, and he's impressed a lot of talking heads in terms of his attitude, in terms of his arm strength. I get a little concerned because I've got some folks that I'm following saying he best compares to Anthony Richardson, which is not exactly who you want a quarterback in comp to at 102. But I think there's enough good there, and he's a little bit more polished coming out than Richardson was, that there's a little bit less to be concerned about. What do you think, RJ?
Well, Saints has been telling us he's taking Cam Ward, so we're going to believe him. He just put out his Zach Wilson tape today, and everybody's going crazy about the throw, like they did a few years ago. So, yeah, I mean, this is a fine landing spot. I'd imagine we'll be projecting this landing spot up until the draft, just because that's what Saints is telling us he's going to do.
Yeah, and again, he's going to say he's going to do this until it becomes more, I would say, either productive or valuable to project something else. Top quarterback in the league on a rookie contract is a incredible, valuable piece to have, and I think there's going to be a lot of folks clamoring for that, especially fans of teams like the Titans or the Giants or the Browns, with their team with an opportunity to get one of these franchise guys. So, again, I think we end up doing a little bit of this every year where we get super excited about a couple of quarterback prospects that we call fringe to start, and then jump in the ranks as we go through the process. But yeah, I think you nailed it. The Zach Wilson tape is always impressive thrown against air. What say you, James? Do you think Cam Ward looks good in mesh shorts against air?
Oh yeah, everyone looks great in underwear.
Absolutely. But we'll save that for the late night podcast part of the show here. So we'll get to the first one of us who have a pick here. And again, I mocked this, and I'm not doing this with any kind of inside information. I'm just kind of taking it where it is. With Cam off the board, and a need at quarterback, I could see RJ taking Shedeur here. But I think instead he ends up going for probably what some would say is the best skill position available. That could be running back with Omarion, or it could be what most have is, I'd say, wide receiver 1. I disagree. I think that's Luther Burden. But that said, I could see RJ saying it's Tet and just playing it safe, especially with a lot of mocks that have Tet, I think, to New England. So would be a win-win for his fantasy team and his homer preferences.
Yep. No, I think this is the perfect pick. If I'm not going to get the best quarterback, I'm going to take the best player at one of the positions, at third. So whether it be the best running back, the best quarterback, the best wide receiver, I'm going to take the best player available. And this is probably the best selection for me. You can debate that, Steve Smith thinks that Golden is a better wide receiver prospect, but Tet is always in the debate as the top 2. So Like I would assume consensus he is the number one, or at least by average he is the number one, and I'll take that. And I get another chance at 7 to take something else. But yeah, I'm walking away with the best player at one of the positions, one of the 3 desirable positions.
Yep. And if nothing else, it goes right into the hopper for future trades or other considerations. So,
Mhm.
all right. Well, because I don't stop ever trading, I'm back in at 4 here. I've gotten 2, I've gotten 3, and I've gotten 4. I got to find a way into 5 and 6, and then somehow find a way to get the Dolphins to actually trade a pick. But we'll come back to that later. So 4, I'm taking Omarion Hampton. Big fan of his game. I think first off, Genty is one of those like Todd Gurley level running back prospects. Like jumps off the page, jumps off the stat sheet, like far and away separates himself as a running back prospect. So in an event that one of those isn't in the class, I think Hampton is the profile of who the RB1 usually is.
Mhm.
So I'll take that at 4. I already have Barkley, but gives me a nice complementary piece to go there, especially considering I just traded away McCaffrey in the last week anyway. So, but again, that also assumes that either this pick or any of those players are on my roster at the time of the draft. And I think we know at this point that is a faulty assumption. So, it's fun to imagine having the 4th pick, but I doubt I actually will.
I think this is a fine option at 4. I do agree. If it wasn't for Genty, who is like that level of superior talent, then Hampton would be the Josh Jacobs level of this kind of draft class. He is good, and he is a tier above everybody else below him.
Yep. And James, just jump in with thoughts as you've got them here. I think sometimes you're on your phone and it's a little bit tough to get the sound right, but by all means, please jump into the rotation to respond as you'd like.
And it's just one of those years where it's hard to, really have a strong opinion this way and the other. There's so many similar grades on each of these prospects. It really comes down to landing spot, your team's needs, and how the league values things. I could see with our league and our league values, a team like yours already having Saquon, if you feel comfortable with his health going into next year, just taking a receiver, just because our receivers tend to they don't peak as high as value, but they hold value longer.
Yep, I think that's 100% correct. And frankly, I was between Omarion, who I like a lot, and I think we're going to have trouble with who I have going to the Giants here up until we get through the draft and we know exactly what position he's going to line up to and how MFL is going to treat him. And that's Travis Hunter. I think from a wide receiver prospect, I find myself in that camp of he's never going to be that breakaway wide receiver 1. He has the skill set to have wide receiver 1 weeks, but that's probably not going to be his forte. He's going to be better used in a complementary role, but with, I'd say, the talent to be able to pop when sort of the time comes. Now, how does that project at the pro level in terms of his receiver snaps and corner snaps, and whether he lines up at the corner position or receiver position, and what does that make his score look like? And what kind of differential is that at each position? At receiver, I don't think there's any question. He's he's worth it, and any cornerback points he gets on top of it is even better. If it's a corner, it's a question of what would he have to score to become sort of the difference maker at the corner position. If I look at the top performers at corner from last year, the highest scoring corner was 230 points. There were 4 corners over 200. At wide receiver, we had 3 receivers over 300, and then the next, call it 23 at 200 or higher. But again, we're starting a lot of receivers at that position, and they're a little bit tougher to come by. So that's why we spend first-round picks on them. If he ends up as a corner, it's a question of if he ends up as, say, a 300-point corner, does that become enough of a differentiator to take him here despite sort of the, I'd say, committee approach that most of us take at corner? Or how much further does he fall? I think I'm still struggling with that question. I don't know if you guys have any more thoughts or opinions in terms of how you guys have started it so far.
He's somewhere in the top 10 if he's a wide receiver, or if he's going to be playing wide receiver and some amount of corner. If he is a corner that will play some amount of wide receiver, then probably the late first round. He might even slide into the second.
Yeah, you're just talking about a big-time risk player. Like, to me, I think he should really just be a mid to late first rounder. Between, there's issues on his tape. He makes all these great plays. He's got all these stats. He's got all this, that, and the other. But some people tend to forget some of these games where he has 2 interceptions. He also lets up 2 touchdowns. He's not always the best in coverage. He's a superb athlete and got a big-time spotlight because of everything else going around him. So fun for the branding, fun for selling jerseys. Going to go high in the NFL draft. How good of a player he'll be, how impactful of a fantasy player he'll be is really up in the air.
Yeah, again, I think that's really the truth of the matter here. I think it's a fun story to think about if he doesn't get a receiver grade or position alignment that becomes really challenging to his value. And then that late first, I think, probably nails it, although he could probably sneak up into that mid-first range because positions do change in our league. So I don't know if it's one of those where MFL would make a decision and say he's this and we're going to stick with it. If our commissions would do something along that line, I think everyone's just kind of waiting to see what MFL does and just kind of picking it up from there. But it's not a bad way of doing this either.
Yeah, well, it also comes down to what your personal wide receiver grade is on him. If you believe enough in him to think he's the wide receiver 3 in this class, and you think he's going to be dual flexibility, you think this, that, and the other, go ahead, take him top 5. You do your thing, No hate on you. It's just, it is one of those things where, like he could come in and it could say wide receiver and you could think, oh yeah, this, that, and the other. And then we get to week 1 and all of a sudden he's a cornerback and you spend a top 5 pick on a corner and he might score 300, but is that going to make you enough of a positional advantage to be worth that kind of pick? Highly unlikely, given how we value corners in this league.
Yeah, fully agree with that. So again, it's a fun thing to debate and a fun thing to sort of bat around as we continue. Look, it's my first mock. I'm not going to deny myself the idea of a little bit of A, homerism, and B, nepotism. So the Dolphins have picks 6, 8, and 9 here. So I thought, who better to take sort of the 3 Ohio State players in this range, with Trevion Henderson going 6, Quinshon Judkins going 8, and Ekbuka going to 9. I know probably that's not the order they would go, but that's just, he's got 3 of those picks with Eagles taking Shedeur in there at 7. I guess, RJ, do you want to kind of react to whether Shedeur is still the pick if Egbuka's on the board, and then anything else that you guys have in terms of how highly I have some of these Ohio State scrubs on my draft here?
I think all of the wide receivers, like it's kind of dependent on where Hunter is, like whether or not they're a top 5 pick, and then you can make an argument for any number of them. Golden, Egbuka. I know you have a preference to Burden. So all of those guys have the possibility of being the second wide receiver off the board. That would be my only thing. If that's the case, if they're the wide receiver 2, then I can see Dolphins taking one of them, maybe ahead of Henderson. But overall, for the 4 picks, the 3 Dolphins picks in mine, I don't see any issue with it. Sanders is an interesting one. I see some mock drafts that have him falling to the mid first round, and then I quickly think that this draft becomes one that is more towards the skill positions than quarterbacks, if that happens in the real draft. But if he ends up going to Cleveland or something like that, then there's a possibility that he ends up being a top 10 pick.
Yeah, I think the reality is it's a bad QB draft. That's been the pin in it this entire offseason and going into last year, and it's still the truth. Unless you're getting, Cam Ward, I don't think you're going to be super excited with taking a quarterback over any of these running back receiver prospects early.
Yeah, I don't necessarily hate that take either. I think, look, it's really challenging with this QB class too, because Ward didn't have any of those big highlights and didn't have any, I call it, Heisman or statement games at Miami that we can look back and say, oh yeah, he's going to be really good at the next level because of this game. And Shedeur didn't have any of those because, let's just face it, Colorado wasn't very good. They're a building program. They've got an infusion of talent, but they just weren't very good. Dion is a big name, but he's also not a very good coach yet. So there's some of this where it's you can see the flashes, but it's raw as far as I'm concerned. So I would not put, anyone out, outside for saying, hey, I'm taking Matt Golden at 6, and you guys are completely full of it here. But at the same time, I could also see somebody saying, I don't know, Jackson Dart ends up at 6 as well, depending on where he goes. I think he's someone that James, you called early on, was going to be a riser, was going to be a quarterback name to watch. And I think you've got a couple of tickets for him rising all the way up to the top 3. But he's starting to make his way to that top 10-ish conversation where it's, does he go to the Saints at 9? Does he go to the Jets as sort of the guy behind Justin Fields? Like, where does he go in that first round? And then is it 3 quarterbacks in the first round, or is it 4 or potentially more? I think it's a lot of developmental and projection of the quarterbacks who are taken there, but definitely some elite traits at some of those quarterbacks without a lot of the polish that we normally see. Yeah.
Well, the issue is, Ward played at Washington State. They throw the ball all over the place. So there's plenty of tape of Ward, his arm ability, his arm talent. He just got to show it off a little bit more at Miami. Now, he made a lot of boneheaded throws. He got lucky on some stuff, this, that, and the other. There's, like I said, none of these quarterbacks are the golden ticket. There's no franchise QB in this. Like, there's no generational talent, I should say. But yeah, and then you get the Sanders, who bought a lot of time, had one of the highest time to throw rates in the entire country, got a lot of dink and dunk stuff, had a lot of issues throwing anything that wasn't college open. a lack of a lot of anticipation throws. And then you get to Dart, and Dart was check down or touchdown. Like, he quite heavily just played, I'm going to dump this to this guy, or I'm going to throw the ball 70 yards down the field to one of my receivers. So there's a lot of missing film to make you really excited about any of these QBs.
Yeah, it's a lot of projection. And look, history tells us that one or two of these guys are going to end up being long-term starters. Usually you don't end up with complete whiffs on draft classes unless it's, the
22.
Yeah, again, some could potentially say there, but if nothing else, they'll hang around for a while, be slightly fantasy relevant, and we'll see from there. But kind of ruining the surprise there. I mentioned my 10th pick. I have Saints taking Matt Golden, and Bills taking Jackson Dart at 11. Saints, again, I already had taken Cam Ward at 2, so I think here he just goes for best, I'd say, physical prospect at the receiver position on the board right now. Golden looked really good on tape as far as I'm concerned at Texas. I think there's some folks who might actually put him at wide receiver 2 in this class, if not wide receiver 1, like Steve Smith did, I think, as RJ was saying. So getting that kind of guy at 10 here is a nice grab, especially depending on, I think, where he lands. I think I'm seeing some NFL.com mocks where he's going to say Washington, which, with all of the love around Jaden Daniels these days, could really see him jump up some boards. And then 11, Jackson Dart. As mentioned, I think if he goes to the right situation with the right coach and the ability to kind of win the starter, plus I also like if he goes 9 to the Saints. I think, to your point, James, a lot of dink and dunk and a lot of, check down and touchdown is kind of the game they play. Like when they had Olave and Shaheed, now they've got Cooks back. It's kind of we're going to run verticals and we're either going to go over the top on you or we're going to check down underneath to Kamar or one of our 7 tight ends. So that's kind of the game they play. So that wouldn't be the worst quarterback for them to have. But that said, that's that's going to be a big change from Derek Carr to a guy like Jackson Dart.
Yeah, well, the big improvement would be, he's got more arm strength than Carr has at this point in his career, and he actually has legs. So it would give them a slightly more, in theory, potent offense. But, you'd have to see how he actually does on the field.
Yep. So if this actually happened, I would be offering my first, maybe my second born, depending on how they're acting at home, to be getting up to 12 because of my love towards Luther Burden. I don't know if that would be something that would interest Jags at this point in his life, but assuming he sticks and picks, I think that's going to be the pick here. I've had a big crush on Luther for at least an off season. I was trying to say, hey, why can't I take him in the draft last year? But I think he's got a lot of those skills. I think he comes very favorably to like a Zay Flowers in terms of how he can win sort of the phone booth matchups. I think he's got the size that people are looking for, kind of at that just around 6 foot, just around 200 pounds, with the right measurables. And the production when he was in college was pretty impressive too. So I think Jags will be pretty happy to put him next to Calvin Ridley at 12. Give him a nice little offense there with Mahomes, with Kyron, and with Jacobs, with Ridley and Burden. And then I think he's got the real Jaguars' new tight end, or at least leader of that right now. We'll see whether he's able to survive the draft. But that kind of completes the basis that Jags needs for a starting offense there. So the last I'd say of the wide receivers that kind of fall into that range of could be wide receiver 2. And I don't think he lets it slide.
Yeah, it's a good pick.
Yeah, it'd be a fun fit for that team because he really needs a receiver. And if Strange steps up and everything, he's got a really good offense. If he can hit on one more receiver and get Strange to play well.
Yeah, again, if he was a little bit more active, it'd be fun to see if he could get Steelers to add something on to to Lawrence, to give himself a little stack there. Not that, hey, yeah, the Lawrence Strange stack is the thing you want, but he needs to fill out a couple other pieces on his roster. And moving Mahomes, who hasn't exactly lit up the fantasy world in terms of points the last couple of years, just based off the name value alone, for a comparable score and other pieces would be fun. But again, that would require both the Steelers and or Jags to trade. So I won't hold my breath.
Yeah, no, but it definitely would be a blast because he gets that done. It does a very good job of getting him highly competitive with Houston. Because to me, Houston doesn't really still have a quarterback, and he gets Burden and everything going. His defense is not very different than Houston's is, so it'd be fun to see how close that division got.
Yep. All right. Well, James, I've got you up at 13, and I had some trouble once we got to this range here because, like I said, what I'd call we've got the end of the big five running backs as far as I'm concerned. I've got the big three receivers. Big three quarterbacks, and then sort of the big four receivers. So this is kind of the end of an offensive tier as far as I'm concerned, with Caleb Johnson at running back, which isn't your top need, but I also, I don't know. I need to do some more work on the tight ends, but I feel like you have done more work on the tight ends and are going to love some of the guys who are a little bit deeper in this class instead of spending an early to mid first round pick on a tight end here. And then also have the ability to maybe identify one or two of the defensive players later instead of jumping at them right here. So a guy like Caleb Johnson, who has some pretty nice game breaking ability, to go next to Trey Benson's not necessarily a bad thing to add.
Yeah, kind of curious as to see where you have some of these other guys at because I know who I'd be taking there, and it would not be Caleb. So
that's kind of what I figured. So it was one of those I don't know what's right, but I wasn't sure what was going to be least wrong.
No, I get you. It's a very hard year.
Yeah, and I said it before to RJ. It's I feel like at a certain point in the draft, and usually it's kind of the early second round, it just becomes kind of the wild, wild west where everyone's got their own boards and there may be some overlap, but in a lot of cases, they're just completely different. Like a guy who's a second round grade on mine is a fourth round grade on yours and undrafted on RJ's. Or I'm taking guys in my fourth round that I can't believe are there because I had hard third round grades on them. Or guys in the fifth round that I was going to take in the third that I just couldn't trade up for and somehow fell. And then same kind of things for everybody else. So at some point it becomes that wild, wild west. And I almost feel like we don't quite get full wild in the middle of the first, but it starts to break that way in terms of where things sit right now, in terms of what order you have these edges in, what orders you have the tight ends in, how you start to filter in that next tier of receivers and other skill positions. So it gets to be kind of a mess here, I'd say, for the next 12 to 14 picks.
Yeah, and it's a different point than it was last year. And it will be different by the time we get draft positions, too. Because last year, for me, we were all fine and dandy until I saw Peyton Wilson get drafted in the first round. I wasn't too far off on anybody, and then Peyton Wilson got drafted. I'm just like, well, with his medicals, I'm not doing that. And then Chop Robinson got drafted before Jared Verse, and I'm like, we were very different on that. So
I think there's some of that stuff that you read too many mocks and you kind of get used to what you see in the mocks, and then you see somebody fall. Like Peyton Wilson, I feel like was kind of last year's in Kobe Dean, where Dean was kind of expected just due to his prolific stats in the college level to be a first round guy, and then he falls through the first, and then he falls through the second, and then he's free falling to the third until finally the Eagles stop his slide. But it's kind of a, hey, what the hell's wrong with this guy that he's sliding like this? And now he's turning into, I call it a leader on that defense. So I think a lot of people are looking at Peyton Wilson with the same idea, like, hey, same kind of thought, same kind of college production. Clearly, this is just happening again. But not everything's the same in this.
Yeah, well, it goes medical grades too, because if you get a medical back as a GM and your medical guy goes, yeah, that's a one contract player. You're like, okay, well, I can't spend a first 3-round draft pick on a guy that my medical staff's already telling me probably won't make it to a second contract because his knee's that bad. And it's one of those things for me. It's just I don't know his longevity to where I didn't see him being worth that much of an investment.
Yeah. Although you get some of that stuff where it's kind of like, hey, it's almost like having a bad meteorologist. Like, how often do you look back and say, my medical guy kind of blew it on this one? Like, I don't know if you saw the stuff with James Dolan, who's been getting dragged a little bit for usually many reasons, but in this case it was because he had an opportunity to trade for Tracy McGrady at some point during his prime and didn't do it because I was told that his ACL or his Achilles was going to rupture, was being held on by like a string, was going to rupture any second, and then he went on to play another like 7 or 8 years, like at an elite level. So it's kind of like, whoever said that as a doctor probably needs to get their credentials checked before they make too many more opinions or too many calls. But nonetheless,
it definitely happens both ways because Jalen Smith for Dallas. All of a sudden, between him and Leighton Vander Esch, it looked like we had 2 all-pro linebackers for years to come. We give Jalen Smith an extension, falls off a cliff. We give Leighton, he gets injured for a year, comes back, we give him a 1-year extension, falls off a cliff again. Like, it can be very real, or it can just be, psyops to get people to fall.
That's true. All right, I've stalled long enough. I'm back on the clock at 14, and I guess probably what would be a surprise to some people is I'm leaning James Pierce over Abdul Carter. Look, I think whoever is running Penn State's strength and conditioning program, like if I go over a team tomorrow and needed to hire someone at a position, I would probably just call Penn State as running your strength and conditioning program and offer that guy to run my strength and conditioning, just because there's something in the water, or he's putting something in the water that every year these guys jump off the tape of, oh my God, did you see like this highlight play or this physical trait or this physical measurement? And it's every single year. So call it bad process, but I break ties against Penn State right now. And I love me those Ds who can line up all over the line, and that's James Pierce for me. So I have him. I need him. I'm taking him 14.
I like it. James Pierce to me was going to be like the next Arden Key. I thought it was going to come down to he had another slower year, and then he goes to the combine and weighs like 240, and then everyone's like, well, I don't know. He ran a 4.6 and he only weighs 240. And the guy that was talked about being a potential top pick fell to the 3rd round for Key. I thought the similar thing was going to happen for him, but he had another good year. So,
yeah, he's a good player. I don't have him above Carter, but I don't think this is, like you said, this is the beginning of that range where we might have wild differences in values, especially before we know landing spots.
Yep. But yeah, and then Carter goes 15 to the Raiders, who need to fill in another guy at that role. He's got Josh Sweat, but Carter would give him a good number 2 there to really solidify that position. So I think he slams that one. Question there is, does he want to take a tight end in that position? Because that's an area of need that he has. But with a couple on the board here, I think he can afford to wait. So Cardinals move in. I have them going Loveland, although he doesn't really need. He's got Laporta. So this is probably a bad pick here. I'll have to come back to this and think about this a little bit more. But just from a valuation perspective, I see the tight end starting to fall in here. Warren is getting talked about for, I guess, a top 15 pick, and Loveland I'm seeing in the top 20. So if that's where they go in the NFL draft, I think it's going to be where they start getting considered in our draft. So depending on what order you have them in, depending on where their landing spots are and the roles in those offenses are going to have a lot to do here. But I have Loveland just slightly above Warren because, like I said, I break tie against Penn State people. And I think Loveland has done more kind of day in, day out kind of tight end. He's going to get on the field a little bit faster versus Warren, who's going to have to get game planned there.
Yeah, I have no issue with that. It's a slight deviation or slight, preference, but I do agree with, like, this is the point where, like, Cardinals might just have to take best player available, and it might just be a position that he's already comfortable at.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely becoming a very quick fan of just best player available at all points in this league.
Yeah, I agree.
Because there's so many teams that are so bad. I don't care if the Commanders at his 3 first-round picks drafts 3 more edge players. If you guys let Abdul Carter slide, if you let this person and the other person slide, let them sit there and stack a 700-point defense end room.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing here is you get a couple guys who have 2 picks in this range that you could double stack a couple of these guys here, especially Pierce, Carter, Michael Williams. I think there's a lot of other edges that are going to go at the top, at the back end of the first round. I didn't get that deep in this first time through, but I think the Bears have an interesting opportunity near the end to really grab 3 players at the end of the draft that help kind of serve as some additional, I'll call it, benchmark pieces for him. Whether they stay on his team is always going to be a question, but he's starting to develop a frame of a team there, whereas I think the last couple of years it's been kind of a opportunistically chasing trades, but I think he's put the investment, he's putting the time in, and he's gotten some of the assets he needs to start building around. Giants is a linebacker, so I have him going Jihad Campbell. Probably a little early for a linebacker, but I think it's kind of a shallow class, so I think we'll see Jihad go somewhere here around the 120. So at this point, it's more of a because of the shallowness pick and both the quality of the player, I think it ends up being where he ends up going. But again, Wild West time. But then Ollie Gordon, Michael Williams to round out my top 20. I'll kind of leave it to you guys. Anyone glaring you feel I missed in a top 20 here?
No, everybody else sucks. Let them all fall.
Harvey and Scadabo are probably right around the 20s, depending on where they end up going. I don't think there's a wide receiver that we didn't talk about.
I'll disagree with RJ there. I'll take Trey Harris.
Okay.
I like Harris. Again, I've struggled with that next tier of receivers. I think people have really liked Harris. People have really liked Iomanor. I think Higgins has jumped up a bunch. I think like a Royals or a Lacey have jumped up a bunch, but I don't know exactly how far up to put some of these guys. I haven't done all my due diligence on those yet. So agree. I think we've got a nice chunk there. I think people are good down to like RB10 in this draft. But kind of the next order of those 5 is a big question. Milroe is going to be an interesting question where he goes. I think he's going to say a lot about where he goes in our draft. If somebody takes him in the back half of the first round in the NFL draft, that he's either an heir apparent or he's going to have a chance to start just from the rushing potential. He's going to be in this range. And then, like I said, defense is interesting. The really, really, I'd say, deepest parts of the defense of this draft are DN, which is a value, but the other parts are really, devalued positions in our league. D tackle's really great. Corner's really great. Safeties, got some interesting options there as well. I like sort of that second or third round linebacker pool that we have here, but it's not necessarily any of the elite guys that say, wow, can't wait to get my hands on some of those. But rewatching some of the DNs today, I really like what I'm seeing.
Yeah, they're gonna take the jobs of some backups and some rotation guys, but there's not a whole lot of guys that are day one starters in this class. I do think that both of the Michigan defensive tackles, they'll start to come into consideration in our late first, just because of the expectation of what they will do production wise.
Yeah. Well, I'll just tell you guys because I'm not in the DT market because I have 7 of them. But I think Derek Harmon is the D tackle one for our league, our purposes. The D tackle out of Oregon. He is.
Yeah, I was watching some tape.
He is insane one-on-one inside on guards. You essentially just can't do it. And he got double teamed a lot at the end of the season and was still productive. And I think he starts pretty early wherever he goes. He'll probably go back half of the second IRL, which means he'll go to a team that's already good. And he's going to be one of those guys that rookie year I could see put up 6-7 sacks. So we'll see. But I do really like him.
Yeah, I don't hate that.
But no, the interesting thing is also just the contracts. We have so many linebackers now going for $20, $30 million that I wouldn't be surprised if we see 2 or 3 go in the late first, just for the factor a rookie linebacker is like $2-3 million versus paying, a draft pick like a third plus $18 million to get someone.
That's true.
And there's definitely some other good ones.
Yeah, it's the change of the positions too. It's linebacker was never really one that we were going nuts over, but then just with sort of the redistribution of things due to true position, it is popping a little bit. All right, should we talk about the trades?
Yeah.
I've got 13 since we talked last week. Let's see. We start with the Buccaneers and Cardinals. Justin Reed for Tyler Scott in 321. Scott was on the taxi squad and I put a claim in. So Cardinals was a motivated seller. Bucks was offering Justin Reed to half the league. So good on you, Cardinals, for jumping on the grenade here. Although I think Cardinals had already gotten a decent stack of safeties already. So I was a little surprised by this, but he had to move Scott anyway, and it's a late third, so it's not the end of the world. But again, surprised at the price.
Yeah, the trade's fine.
Hmm.
There's other ones that I'm going to have a lot to say about, so I'll wait to talk about those.
Ooh, fun. Bengals and Steelers is a fun one. Inter-division is always great when it can happen. Josh Hines Allen in 306 for Milton Williams and Fred Warner. It helps round out Bengals defense to look a little bit, more balanced. Josh Allen is always one of those guys who is near the top in terms of pass rushing grades. So He's a nice piece to have, but again, he's a little bit more expensive now than he was in his early to mid 20s. That said, you know, helps both teams. It's kind of a balanced trade. I think I would rather have the Allen side, just preference, but I can't hate either of them for sort of balancing things out with a little bit of their depth.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of this trade for Bengals. I think Allen's worth significantly more than Fred Warner. I think you could have added something else to the 306 and just gotten Fred Warner, and I don't see Milton Williams as being that much of an improvement on anything. I mean, don't get me wrong, he'll probably end up both of them will probably end up outscoring Allen's as a standalone, but I think Allen has more value than that.
Yeah. Not to be outdone, try to keep the blockbusters going. Gino, Christian McCaffrey, Ayuk, and Kelsey heading to the Rams to make the NFC West great again. For Tua, Emmanuel Wilson, Zach Ertz, Arnold Ebiketie, and 3 26 first-round picks. Rams, Bengals, and Ravens. Yeah, I mean, I'm never going to stand still in terms of deals. I feel like Tua is a late first in value here. I wanted to have Ertz to platoon with Sanat. Arnold Ebiketie is somebody who I've been after for 3 years. I don't want to speak ill of other teams here, but his previous owner basically knew I wanted him and refused to trade him to me. So to actually add him, even though he's probably not worth what I paid for him, is fine. I'm willing to do that, but just lets me kind of add some cap, add some picks, and reshape my roster a little bit differently. And Rams has an offense.
Yeah, Rams looks like a good team now. I like that. That is a good improvement. I think you did good. I don't think you did great necessarily in value, but you already have players at all those positions, so just turning them into draft picks to do something with later and getting another quarterback, a tight end, defensive end that you prefer, I think that's pretty decent. I like what you got as far as the picks, but it was a substantial amount of points going back to Rams.
Yep.
I have no issue with the trade at all. Values, everything fine. Just his division with the Cardinals coming up with how powerful the Seahawks are. I'm holding on to those picks. This is a desperate, I want to compete, and he bought some old guys and some health questionable guys.
Yeah, fair enough. Although the fake Christian McCaffrey video today was a funny one, especially considering the I don't wear board shorts, nice try follow-up. Let's see. 9 and 10 here. Taxi theft. Cowboys put in a bunch of theft requests. Got Nehemiah Pritchett from Bengals and Kaitan Oladapo from me. So that's a corner and safety. Mac Hollins for Amari Cooper. Look, Mac is just a fun player, and Amari, rumor is he's on his way, out of the league, but it's a big name that could potentially be worth something later this year. We'll see what happens with the rest of free agency. Keenan Allen's still available, Cooper's still available, so Diggs is still available. Some big name receivers from 2 or 3 years ago still pretty well out there. So either a nice grab by Jags or a timely dump by Chiefs.
Yeah, I would probably say more likely a timely dump. I don't know that some people don't like you said, some people seem to think Amari's just about done.
Getting into the spirit of the interdivision trades, Bears and I jump into it. Bo Nix 104 and 210 for Tua, Marvin Harrison 127, and the Rams first. Basic calculus, 3 firsts are probably getting you in that range where I think Bo probably grades out better than any of the quarterbacks in this year's class. So if we're really going to consider taking Cam at 102 or 103, that's the level you got to come up to. And I think the 3 picks is what you'd have to do for that. Harrison, I have kind of equivalent to that range as well. So it's a little juice on top of the 104 as well to make that work. But, it lets Bears pivot, although he's now pivoted off of both of his quarterbacks. Thought was he'd add a little risk in Tua, but he doesn't stand still for long. So, this is the challenge of being the Bears.
So I don't really like this for you. I understand the picking up Bo Nix, and my only thing is, like, did the 104 and Marvin Harrison really have to be involved in this? And I guess maybe it does to make Bears happy about the move, and that makes some sense. But like I view it as Harrison is roughly the 104. Let's call it the 104 and 210. And then it was Tua and 2 first rounders for Bo Nix. And I just don't know if Nix is worth that right now. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm probably wrong.
Yeah, that's fair. I think a lot of people would say that, but I think where he was drafted last year, plus was able to put up Pro Bowl numbers in his rookie year. It's either going to be a CJ Stroud hell of a regression or some cheap Pro Bowl level points at quarterback, which is what we're all trying to do when we pick them as high as we do. So we'll see. And I think, Tua's got to have the right owner. It's somebody who is ready to fully embrace the risk of having him in there. And I think the concern I have there is even with the couple of games Tua was healthy last year, that offense didn't look like it used to in terms of its power. So I'm a little concerned about sort of whether Tua is a bounce back candidate or a $35 million albatross.
Okay.
I don't know. What do you think about all the yacht partying with Baker Mayfield?
Either the Florida quarterbacks are going to be terrible or amazing this year.
Yeah, I mean, Baker has acted like he has a concussion, but he hasn't had as many necessarily tracked to him. Tua, when you're famous for your concussions, that's a different story with that kind of behavior. Yeah, no one's surprised. 118 going for Quiddy and Trent Simpson. I think Trenton's going to win that job back, and if he does, it's the Ravens defense. So it's a nice piece for me to have, and I do love me some Quiddy. I think I have him kind of at that end of the first round valuation right now, rather than the 2 firsts that he was at before. So adding a guy like Trent, who I think is probably a second round in value at the moment, kind of makes that work for me.
I think
Wilson's a dump.
Yeah, I think this one's a fantastic trade.
Covering the waterfront here, from god awful to not your favorites to good, not great to fantastic. So that's the fun part of making so many deals. You really cover the.
We got some more atrocities on the way.
I know. Let's see, 321. The Buccaneers got in the Justin Reed trade to pick up Payne Durham, and the Raiders 26 third. I think Raiders is just acquiring picks this year, so good on them for that. Durham, I think, was a free agent pickup, although they're saying, 5 touchdowns this year off 21 targets, 263 yards, 5 touchdowns. Clearly he's the guy to own in Tampa. So solid ad, and Raiders gave away a Studley tight end. I don't know how they can afford to do that. All right. Sarcasm is, I guess, not appreciated. Dallas linebackers for the Ravens, 26 first. I've liked Damon Clark since he's come out. Obviously injury concerns. But when he's been good, he's been good. When he's been healthy, he's been good. Overshown jumped out last year. He's going to get expensive this year, but the collection of those for what I see as a playoff first is fine. Granted, I probably overpaid.
A little bit. I don't hate it. But you bought 3 legs on 2 players, basically.
I just find it funny that I talked to RJ one night because you offered me a 4th for one of those 2 players, and I was upset about how lowly you valued one of those guys.
I think I still value them around that, and that's why I'm not the biggest fan of this trade. One of them is going to be a starter, but I just don't know which one. So you basically bought 1 starting linebacker spot.
I'm going to be honest, man. I think Overshown long-term might be better off just going back to safety. Because he was a safety at Texas, goes to linebacker, gets hurt, comes to the NFL, gets hurt. I just don't know. He's not great at the point of attack, taking on blockers. He tries his best to be agile and get around blockers, and he's got hurt twice now doing that. I just don't see a long-term linebacker role for him with his health. I hope I'm wrong because he's a heck of a player when healthy.
But I do like Clark. Like he's already shown in the league that he can be productive.
Well, he came in last year, lost his job to a vet and a rookie. Like he fell to 4th on the depth chart. So I don't. I was happy when I got rid of him when I did.
Yeah, I mean, ever since he came in the league, I think I was trying to get him in the 4th. I couldn't get in, and someone got him at like 408, and then he popped a little bit, and I got a little pissed off about it. And then now, again, one of those guys that I wanted to get 2 years ago and would have been a good idea then. That probably isn't as good of an idea now. But you know what? I'm not perfect.
We all have those. That's why I have Divine Diablo right now.
And that guy sucks.
Yep. Giants trading Zay Flowers to get a defense. Jay Flowers, Jalen Harrell, Dwayne Smoot, and Jordan Hicks, along with a 208 for Nick Bonito, Tuli Polopoto, and Nick Bolton. So 2 pretty solid edges and a linebacker for Giants for Flowers, who I think folks value at kind of that, I'd put him in that 110 to 112 range in terms of if I'm trading a pick for him. So that in 208 to get this defensive haul is probably about right, but damn, that's a lot of firepower to add to a defense.
I don't like this trade for Giants. Like, I feel like Zay and Jordan Hicks, like, that about covers it. Like, then he just gave him 208, and I mean, the other 2 don't matter, but, like, yeah.
I love Zay, but I'm going to be honest, man. He's tied to Lamar. That's the first 1,000-yard receiver that wasn't a tight end in Lamar's history.
No.
Like I'm not projecting big points for him to give up as many defensive points as he did, especially with the Pats being as strapped as he is. I would have kept my defense over this deal.
I'm in the same boat with Zay, but Zay is one of those players that could be a stepping stone to getting a Jamar or something like that in this league. Like, you can use Zay and something else to get you a top 5 receiver. but you're not going to be able to trade Nick Benito or Nick Bolton for a plus for a top wide receiver unless somebody makes a horrible mistake, and you shouldn't be counting on mistakes like that.
No, but that's one of those ones where it comes to, hey, do you want to draft a linebacker here at 25, or do you want to take Nick Bolton off the hands and, reinvest that and take a swing?
Yeah, sure.
Something of that nature. Like, to me, Benito is another, like, all three of the guys he traded away defensively, you could argue are worth a late first in value.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. But, like, in those scenarios, I'm probably going to want the draft pick because the draft pick can get me something like a more premium asset. And, like, Zay Flowers is borderline one of those premium assets that could be used to get an even better asset. So it's just like it's the quality of what's being gotten, not like traded off, that I have the issue with.
Yeah, no, I get that, because to me, like, I could honestly see all three of those defensive players averaging higher points per game than Zay.
Sure.
And I don't feel like that's too much of a stretch. Like, that's going to be at least one out of the three, if not two out of the three, or three out of the three.
Right. But at the end of the day, you break all three of those down into draft picks, and they don't amount to what you could probably get for Flowers.
Yep. So I don't know. It's always weird this time of year because you ask about Flowers end of the season, and different conversation. Now with Rookie Fever starting to edge in, it's a different valuation on the player. So it's offense and rookies for defense, which is often frowned upon in this league. Granted, this is the kind of defense you buy if you're going to be buying it.
Yep. This is just one of those where, like, all right, we're in dynasty value mode now, and like along with the, like, you don't trade offense for defense. So, like, Zay Flowers has, like, probably this offseason and next offseason to still be, like, a pretty high valued, like, dynasty asset. Then he'll kind of just fade in with everybody else if he hasn't popped by then. But right now is one of those where, like, he's probably worth more than he actually should be, but you should capitalize on it, not turn it into slightly above average defensive players.
Well, the other disappointing part is just when you see players of that magnitude, those kind of quality defensive players, it's nice if people, say on Discord, hey guys, I'm really looking for a receiver. I'm willing to move all these defensive players for a receiver. Like, I'm willing to do this, guys. Hey, just if you're going to trade a good player, like a player that could be worth a first or more, it never hurts to let it be publicly known, because you have no idea what you could potentially get for a player if you don't ask everybody.
Yeah,
that's true. But I will say, as a team that often trades with Patriots, sometimes if I'm just kind of thinking something, I'll throw it his direction, and he's usually pretty good for a counter or a conversation on it. So he's one of those that lets you know pretty quickly of whether that's something that's interesting to him or something that's not. So, there's a few owners like that in the league where I feel like it's the, hey, I haven't fully formed this idea yet, but here's kind of a general concept, and you end up with a deal happening. All right. So like I said, Tua did not stay on the Bears for long. Tua 209, and the Rams first he got from me go to the Saints to pick up JJ McCarthy. So in the end, he trades Bo Nix to basically get JJ McCarthy and the 127. So, hey, not bad if you feel like JJ is going to be as good as Bo. You pick up a late round pick, which is definitely a nice thing to do. and it looks like JJ's got some pretty good weapons to play with there. And then Saints has Tua at the position, but that doesn't preclude him from doing anything else that he wants at 2. So it's going to be fun to see how he continues to ride the wave here. And then, of course, the Giants-Panthers trade of Landon for a 4th-round pick. That's truly the highlight of what we were just covering there. Giants are here just in time. We covered the Landon Roberts for 4th-round pick. What are your thoughts?
The blockbuster.
Oh, I scammed him so good, guys. I got LB1 for 4th, guys.
He actually might be the LB1 in Las Vegas.
How dare you?
I do not believe that.
Hey, when you get enough shitty linebackers in a room, any of them could start.
This is true.
Yeah, I have my faith in 2 others, but again, my faith will either be rewarded or be let down very quickly.
They even let that Divine Diablo, garbage linebacker, start there for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, fools. That guy was a safety all along.
Put some respect on that glorious NFL name.
He's not on your team anymore.
But come on, Diablo starting for the Raiders in Vegas, that's just too good.
Yeah, although the Dirty Birds isn't bad either.
That is true.
All right. Hour and 10 minutes, not bad for our first mock draft. We'll go for a full round next time when we have a little bit more prep time, a few more people involved in it. Again, happy to be the sacrificial lamb that first time, but next time others will have to kind of put their boards up there and help with the debate a little bit. But nonetheless, appreciate the Eagles, Giants, and Panthers joining. And yeah, we'll see what happens in kind of post-pod production here. But I'm home for the rest of the week, and we'll kind of get another pod going again next week. Glad we could squeeze one in this week, and good luck with all your trading, and start the scouting, because the draft will be here in about a month, and that'll be here before you know it.